Hi, everybody. Will here from Dog Show Tips and Canine Chronicle TV. This week on the interview chair, we have Dominic Carota, and he's going to talk about his Hallam Hounds and how he got started and where they've been and what's next. Hi, everybody. Will here with the interview chair brought to you by Canine Chronicle TV and Dog Show Tips. And today on the chair is very good friend Dominic Carota from Hallam Hounds. How are you, Dominic?
I'm doing great, Will. Thank you.
Good to see you. Just got back from Helsinki.
I did. I had a great time. I got to see some of my great friends from AKC, as well as a lot of my European friends, and those breeders of my breed, which are Pharaoh Hounds, throughout Europe. So there was quite a few breeders at that show. So it was nice to catch up.
What was the Pharaoh Hound entry there?
It was 42, which is
Oh,
actually
good.
a very good for
Yeah.
our breed. We're considered a rare breed, or we're a low entry breed here in the United States. So it was exciting to see that number of dogs in the ring.
Yeah, for sure. Exactly. And the quality was good, fair, good,
Yeah,
excellent.
I think the quality was good. I mean, as a judge and as a breeder, you always tend to be very critical of your own breed, which is important, I think, because you're always trying to go to the next generation and better your work. But there was some quite a few nice dogs. Of course, I have a special place in my heart for veterans, and there was a veteran there that I thought was just spectacular. So that was always nice to see.
Oh, excellent. That is fun to see your breed in excess like that. Okay, let's get started. Tell me, Dominic, how you got started in this crazy world of dogs.
Well, I had dogs growing up. My parents had Weimaraners, so I was always used to a purebred dog, but I wasn't involved with my breed until I was out of college.
Excuse me
I
for a
wanted.
second. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in upstate New York.
Okay.
If people are familiar with a lot of the Boston spa shows, I know a lot of people from Canada come down for those. So I grew up in Saratoga County, which is right by, Saratoga Springs area. So.
Yep, I got it. Sorry. Go ahead.
No worries. So, I really wanted a dog, having a sporting dog in the family, or sporting dogs in the family rather. I wanted a dog that was active, athletic, and I was drawn to the Pharaoh Hound, essentially because they were somewhat independent, like I am, and very athletic, and. Historically, as I said, AKC Pharaoh Hound, the breed in AKC rather, is considered a low entry breed, but it's one of the most active breeds in terms of participation. So the Pharaoh Hound in the United States competes in conformation, lure coursing, fast cat, scent work, dock diving, agility, obedience. They're a very active breed, and that's really what I was drawn to. So couple that with short hair and dry mouth. I thought that would be a great breed for me at the time. It was around 1993. I started doing the research on the breed, and I was drawn to a woman who, at the time, lived actually not too far, about an hour and a half from me in New York. She subsequently retired right around that time and moved to Florida. And her name was Rita Sachs, and Rita wrote one of the books on Pharaoh Hounds. So she started out as my first mentor, and I acquired my first Pharaoh Hound from her, and that was in 1994. So I've been in the breed about 31 years.
And how old were you when you started?
Oh, very young, Will, very young.
I'm just curious because I have a son that was born in '93. So,
Yeah, well, I was a little older. I was a little older than one at the time.
yeah, okay,
So
excellent. So, where did you go from there? So, you've just
yeah,
you've
so he
decided
he
on
turned
Pharaoh
out.
hounds.
Yeah, I started showing him.
How
with
did
my
you learn to show dogs? Had you been to
very
shows before?
I'd been to a few to watch, but I hadn't actually participated. I've been considered by many of my good friends as a very poor handler, but I do my best.
I
But
can
I was
help you
smart,
there.
but I was smart enough to know to seek out professionals in that instance. My career was kind of just taking off after college. I didn't have a lot of time. My partner at the time was involved as well and started showing our second Pharaoh Hound and did quite well with her. The first Pharaoh Hound that I was talking about turned out not to be the best show dog, if you will. So he ended up being a house pet for his entire life. Um, so about 1999, it's been that long. I sought out someone to help me show the dogs because clearly I didn't have the time and the skill. Pharaoh hounds can be a little difficult sometimes in the show ring, and so I needed someone who had a great hand. And I ended up hiring Stacy. Her name was Stacy Snyder at the time. That was her maiden name, and she's now Stacy Threlfall. And I hired her in 1999, and she too was quite young at the time. But it's
Yeah.
been a 26-year experience. And what happens, I think, in the dog world is these are our family that we choose. And she is a very special person to me. Her and Evan, that's her husband, and her two children. And they become more like family rather than just a business relationship. And I think, you can attest to that in your experiences. So I walked Stacy down the aisle when she got married to Evan. So it's that type of, I think, relationship, which kind of gives me a sense of camaraderie and of family within our sport. And Stacy's been my handler now, so it's going on 26 years.
That's great. That's incredible. And usually those handler or client relationships don't last that long, especially nowadays. But
Yeah.
how did you choose Stacy? Did you watch her for a while and see how she showed or meet
I
her? How did you do it?
I then met her then husband, um, introduced me to her. And he was introduced to me. It was Michael Work at the time, and he handled Basenji's. So he was familiar with the hound group and the hound world, so to speak. So I was introduced to Michael. It was at the Springfield shows, and Stacy, I don't believe, was there that day. And he said, you should probably talk to, my girlfriend. She would be really great. I think they weren't married at the time, so I think it was his girlfriend at the time. And he said, I think she would really be great. She's got a great hand. And literally, it's like the first time she put her hands on the dog, the skill was evident. Her ability to command the dog. Fairhounds, as I said, are very independent. I think if you heard me say that earlier, they have a mind of their own when it comes to things they want to do. And she was very easily able to guide them to make them do what she wanted them to do and to perform in
Right.
the ring. And, as they say, the rest is history. She was able to get within several years, one of my first dog to get an all breed best in show, which is again at the time back in the early 2000s. That was a tough thing to do on Pharaoh Hounds. And she was able to do that. She's won countless national specialties with my dogs. And she's just been truly an asset to the Hallam brand. And she's the face of Hallam, quite frankly, in the ring. So that relationship continues. And, you mentioned something, and I think it's very important that we touch upon this, and it's loyalty to one another, loyalty to the sport, loyalty to the things we do as dog people. And that's most evident when there's a problem. We all come together. But I think what happens is over the years, that loyalty and that bond, um, if you can keep it going, which we have, I think that in and itself is a success.
Well, there's no question. And I have to say, it's on a sidebar, I've watched Stacy show your dogs, and she's incredible. I love handlers that their dogs to do things, not tell their dogs to do things. And she's like that. She just kind of directs them around, and she gets so much out of them. And at the height of it, you hardly even notice the handler, and all you see is the dogs. And I love that aspect. I love it.
Well, yeah, I think when we talk about, and I think you've seen it with there's so many talented handlers there and that are true professionals in the sense of the word. is that I think it's a very challenging career. I think it's very demanding in terms of the travel and the hours. But when they go in the ring, and these are the professionals that I think many people look up to, when they go into the ring, they actually don't look like they're working. It just comes natural, right? They walk in and it just happens. And one of my mentors years ago told me, the Pharaoh Hound standing should look like the same dog on the move. You should have that elegant outline. And Stacy's able to get the best out of my dogs, whether it be a puppy who she just got over the weekend. And I think she used the words bucking bronco for this little 6-month-old puppy. But I know in a very short period of time that will be a dog that's well trained as it walks into the ring. Because to me, there's nothing worse, especially now that I'm judging conformation and as a breeder judge, is to have set up a dog for failure, walking into the ring with a dog that's so green, that's not had any experience, and that happens from time to time. And you want to give the dog the best benefit in terms of conformation and being able to see the best attributes. And again, Stacy's able to do that. So
So how did you come up with and what's the direction you took with your Hallam Hounds? How did you come up? You started off with the dogs.
yeah,
Who
so
did you get
initially,
involved? Who did you ask
so
for
my
help or guidance? Sorry.
well, I think no worries. I think that it's hard to say. It's always hard to talk about yourself, especially when you're going back 20 and 30 years.
Yeah.
But I think I had and still do have a design build specify company. So I work with architects and designers that work for me, and my eye was always drawn to sort of balance and symmetry, and that was just my eye. So I was always looking for breed specimens that exuded what I would refer to as balance. We always say there's no perfect dog, but there are dogs that are closer to the standard than others, if you will. And one of the first, I think, forays in success was actually in the performance area. So I had my first Pharaoh Hound that was able to win the national field championship title through the American Kennel Club National Lure Coursing Championship, and that was back in I think 2007, so not quite 20 years ago. And the AKC offers the national field championship title in lure coursing to one sight hound, um, one title per year. So it's a very rare title. It's a rather coveted title. And I was able to either breed or own three of national field champions, which culminated in Hallam being named the 2014 Breeder of the Year for performance in lure coursing. So that was a very exciting time. So,
That's a great
yeah,
honor. Yeah.
yeah, oh, absolutely. Because I think we talk about form follows function. So the
Right.
dogs are being bred to do what they're going to do. But I think what happens is, I think we have to take the I out of the discussion because it's really a we, right? It's we as a group of people, as breeders. I mean, I stand on the shoulders of all those breeders that came well before me. Without their work, these dogs don't exist, and hopefully that, when I'm gone, that will be carried on as well by others. So it's very important for me to pay respect and homage to those individuals that did all of that work. And what was happening is I saw some really great dogs, and there was one dog in Europe in particular, in Sweden. He was a stallion of a dog, and he had great balance, and he may have been a little extreme, if you will, considered by some of the American breeders. Um, but I thought he is what we needed. At least it's needed what Hallam needed at the time. Some dog that had just exuded uh, masculinity. Um, he exuded breed type, in my opinion, in terms of his balance. He had a beautiful, extremely beautiful headpiece. And I did everything I could to acquire him on a lease to come to the United States. So in 2001 to 2002, I negotiated to bring him in, and I was able to do that. And out of that, that subsequently that next year he was the Fairhound Club American National specialty winner, and then three of his get went on to win national specialties, and then three more went on to grandchildren went on to win national specialties. So he was a dog that I would say jump started the Hallam breeding program to the level that it is now. I think it would have taken me many years to accomplish what that dog accomplished for me at the time. And he was
But you
bred
were
by
smart enough with the foresight to bring this dog, to use this dog. A lot of people don't have that foresight and don't think about it. They see a beautiful dog and think, that's a beautiful dog, but you had the foresight to bring him in.
I'm also of the opinion that if you believe in your heart, right? And we're not always, we're human, we make mistakes, but if you believe in your heart that this is something the breed needs, or it's something that you really believe in, you have to go for it. You just can't sit on
Mhm.
your hands. You actually have to make that choice and take the initiative to acquire the dog. It was not an inexpensive proposition, so there was a funding part of it, but there was also a part of it is that I really felt at the time that if the breed itself couldn't use this dog in America, that I definitely could, and the Hallam program could. The other thing that he brought to the table, which is I think we can't really diminish, is his temperament. Temperament to me is one of the key ingredients as a breeder because we're sending these dogs out into the world, right? We're sending them out to homes that may have had a pharaoh hound or not, or may have ever had a dog. And you want them to be good ambassadors for the breed. You want them to be good with their children. You want them to be good with when they go out into public, with other dogs. And that's a key ingredient for breeders. We don't have kennels that have 100 and 200 dogs anymore. So, I think at the height of it, Hallam had 20 pharaoh hounds, between the house and the kennel. That's quite a few dogs nowadays, but historically in some of the big kennels that was nothing you know um, so for me it's important that when these dogs go to their homes that they stay there and that they are they're good ambassadors for the breed and quite frankly for the sport of purebred dogs and today as of right now I think I mentioned that dog's headpiece. Well, there was a son of his that was produced on one of the first litters that had a spectacular headpiece, and that dog ended up being a therapy dog, and he was a dual champion. So he was a conformation champion and a lure coursing champion. One of my first um, best in field lure coursing champions. He was not owned by me. He was owned by a good friend of mine, Robert Newman in California, and Robert did amazing things with this dog. And that dog was one of the first hounds to be a federally certified crisis response dog through the Hope Crisis Response Program. And today, as I was just started, had his headpiece uh, uh, casted by Jim Guyon, who is no longer with us. He was a sculptor in the Pacific Northwest, and his name was Logan. He was a dual champion. I believe Logan of Baku's of Aralay, an excellent dog, and his bronze headpiece is now in the museum of the dog at 101 Park Avenue in Manhattan. So again, a very special dog, both in temperament and what he accomplished and what he gave back to the public, so to speak. But those are the things I think that we have to focus in on. How do we take our breeding program forward? And I believe that that particular dog, his name was Ramson. His
What was his
owner.
full name? This is
Yeah,
the dog
it
you
was
brought
a.
over.
Yes, yeah. His name was Ramson, and he was Pharaoh Anubis was the kennel. So, and again, he was a. By the time he came here, he was not quite a veteran, but he was close to it. He was actually a champion in I think 7 or 8 countries in Europe at that time. But again, a very special dog. He was here on a lease. He was here from 2002, September of 2002, right through to 2004. So right about 2 years, I had him here. And then he was so special to me personally that I took the opportunity every time I could to. It was a good excuse to fly to Stockholm to see him because that's where he lived. And he died just, I think, about 14 and a half years old. So he lived a good long life. That's a good life for a male pharaoh hound. Um, but he was very special to me, both on a personal level because he was such a great dog to have at your side, but he was also a great dog in the show ring, a great producer, and quite frankly, a great ambassador for the breeds. So I believe he kind of leapfrogged the breeding program many years forward. And again, that was a collaborative effort. It was between Hallam, Stacy showing the dog, the breeder in Sweden, and all the people here that were supporters that helped orchestrate the arrangement to have him come here to the United States and again be a good ambassador for my breed in particular.
And where did you first see him again?
Actually, well, if you think about 20 something years ago, we didn't have this, right? We didn't have
Right.
all the years. So I ended up getting uh, a video of him, like an actual video.
Hmm.
Someone sent
But
to
how
me.
did you know to do
So
that? Did you just inquire, or did somebody
well,
tell you you should see this dog?
yeah,
Or
somebody said, "Oh, there's some very nice dogs in, Sweden." And the dogs that were here in the United States, the dogs I had, uh, a lot of them were sourced originally through England, through the Merry Kennel in the United Kingdom. Many of those dogs and some of their predecessors, immediate predecessors in the United Kingdom, were sourced from the island of Malta, where that is the national Pharaohhound is the national breed of Malta. They're referred to Kelteb Fennec in Maltese. So there was a direct link from England to the United States. However, some of those dogs then went to Sweden, and Sweden developed a very nice breeding program. Particularly, there was the Antephus kennel and the Pharaoh Anubis kennel, which I just referenced as the home from Ramson. And these were all important breeders in the history of the breed. And the other breeder at the time in Sweden was the Enigma kennel, the Lon family. And so they all led to the dogs that we have today, quite frankly. And when we talked about Helsinki, I got to see some of those people and those dogs, which was exciting.
so how did you, because again, it was back in a time when you didn't have all this. How did you source out these people? Did somebody in America, as a mentor wise, did somebody in America advise you to do these things, or did you just take it on yourself?
Well,
How
yeah.
did
So
you?
at the time, I was friendly with a woman in New Jersey. Her name was Nancy Sourbuts. She had the Sovereign Kennel, and Nancy had imported a bitch named, I believe her name was Enigma Sweet Heather Bell, and that bitch was from the Lon family in Sweden. I don't recall, quite frankly, because it was so long ago, if Nancy actually went there, but she was very well aware of some of the good breeding stock, if you will, in Sweden, and she really recommended that we take a look there. And I think it's not because we weren't having success. It just, I felt as though we could do better as a breed.
Mhm.
Because at that time, and by 2003, the Howland Kennel had already won a national specialty owner handled with a bitch that we acquired from another breeder in the United States here from the Camarage Kennel. Her name is Marilyn Smith. She currently lives in New Hampshire. And that bitch was subsequently bred to the male I just mentioned, Ramson from Sweden, and resulted in some really wonderful dogs. And one of those dogs was Logan, as I mentioned. The other was Beck. He was a three-time national specialty winner. And there was another dog there that I sent to England, and he was the number one male Pharaoh Hound in England at the time. And then he was also, I believe, the top stud dog in England for the Pharaoh Hound breed for probably 3 or 4 years. Um, so again, it was the recommendation of Nancy, but quite frankly, Will, it's a leap of faith, right? You're
Mhm.
looking at these dogs thinking, I think this will work. I hope this will work, and you take that leap of faith. You put your resources behind it, both in money and time, and you hope and pray it works out. In this particular instance, it did. So, because just recently, I have a male in my home now who's 6, and he would be the great great grandson of Ramson, and he is I believe, fourth Pharaoh Hound in history to be the three-time national championship or national specialty winner from the Pharaoh Hound Club. So, we look at this in history, but yes, it takes work. Sometimes it takes great thinkers, but ultimately, some of it's luck, some of it's hope.
Oh, luck does take a turn in all of us,
Yeah.
and Everything
Yeah.
we do, we just hope it's always good luck. It's not always good
Yeah.
luck.
No, no, it's not. No, absolutely. But in this case, it was, and it was, as I said, it kind of took Hallam to the next level.
Now, have you, because you've done so well with Hallam Hounds, obviously there's been some offshoots of Hallam Hounds where you've got people started. How do they just approach you and say, "Hi, Mr. Carota, I'd like to start in the world of Pharaoh Hounds"?
Well, I don't think so. I think the world's changed a bit, quite frankly, Will. There's that face to face kind of like, shake your hand. It's kind of, I don't want to say gone by the wayside, but it seems to be the minority of times that we experience that. Right now, people tend to contact you electronically. They contact you over the internet. I saw your dog, right? I love your dog.
Mm.
And I think as a breeder, you appreciate that, but you also are cognizant of the fact that um, when we were growing up, and I don't want to, date us both, but when we were growing up, um, we actually had to go and meet the dogs. We had to actually go and talk to people and learn about the dogs. So
I still
sometimes,
try to. That part of me
yeah,
still wants to do
oh,
that. So,
absolutely. But I think what happens is you have a top winning dog and they see these beautiful dogs and I believe my dogs are beautiful, right? And I also believe my dogs have faults. So I want to, I want to explore those and I want to, it, um, acknowledge those faults, but I also want to acknowledge their attributes. And sometimes folks will see a dog on the internet and it's a top winning dog. It must be great, and sometimes it is, but sometimes it's just a great show dog. It may not necessarily be the best dog for a breeding program or the best dog that fits the standard the best, but it could be a great show dog. So you've got to be able to parse that out as a breeder when people approach you, and you have to establish what they're looking for. Are they looking to just win, or do they care about the breed? There's a big difference, in my opinion.
most definitely. Uh, you've been in this breed for a long time. Are there dogs out there that you wish you could have been a part of? Not dogs that are
Yeah,
being shown
actually,
now. I don't want to mention
it's
those, but
no,
dogs in the
that's
past.
fine. I think that's a fair question. It's very interesting. Yes, there's actually a bitch that for a variety of reasons, mostly it's interpersonal. Um, and I can say that now because I'm great friends with this woman who owned the bitch and actually was at her house yesterday looking at puppies. So it was kind of exciting. But she had a bitch, and this bitch was her call name was Simone, and Simone was bred by Pam Haig and I believe Joyce Martin at the time, and that was the Shima Mia kennel. That was on the West Coast, and many of my dogs to this day do come down from those dogs. And Simone was a lovely bitch. She was one of those Pharaoh hounds that won the Pharaoh Hound national specialty here in the United States for three times. Um, for whatever reason, and we won't go into the details, it did not work out. The arrangement did not work out. And I really would have loved to have bred Ramson, who I mentioned to her. I think that would have been a stellar breeding. Ultimately, though, and this is the way the world works, ultimately um, ended up breeding to the sister. And the sister's name was Melody. Um, I think Melody to this day may hold the title of the top group wins for a Pharaoh Hound here in the United States. I think she has something like 30 group wins, which was rare, especially it is now, but back then it was definitely rare. Anyway, out of that breeding, there were I think there were two national specialty winners out of that breeding that came out of that breeding, and subsequently additional national specialty winners that came in successive generations from that particular breeding. But that's one of the bitches I wish it did happen. But we can't go back in time, and I appreciated everything that bitch was. Unfortunately, we could not come to agreement at the time, but that's life.
Exactly. Now, are there people out there, non-Pharaoh Hound people, that sent you in the right direction and you really leaned on as well?
Early on, no, no. Early on, it's definitely Pharaoh people,
Mhm.
um, and a lot of we mentioned this offline when we were talking, but I experienced this with a lot of the old time breeders, at least in Pharaoh hounds. They're very humble and didn't always talk about like this is how you do things. They would show you by example if you follow me, right? They would say this is
Yeah.
how I do it. Um, and this is why. So the teaching moment didn't come in this kind of, you have to do it this way, or you have to, they hammer it into your head. They taught you by example, and quite frankly, sometimes they taught you by example of what not to do.
There's
There
always
was,
that.
yeah,
As long as you
there
notice
was,
it, take note
yeah,
of it.
absolutely. There was a longtime breeder, and um, she felt really, really strongly, and I won't mention her name, very strongly about repeating a breeding. And it just could not wrap my mind around why she wanted to do this repeat breeding with my bitch. Um, because the first breeding was okay. It wasn't great, in my opinion, right? There was a few dogs that were good. Were they great? In my opinion, they weren't relative to the standard. They were great dogs, don't get me wrong. They had great temperaments, but they just didn't fit what I felt was the standard. So, I stopped that at the time from happening because, the bitch was in ownership with me. So I felt as though that it wasn't necessary. So I never understood that sometimes. And I think what happens is they taught me too to never become too kennel blind. And unfortunately, I think in the dog world and what I witnessed at the time was there was so many interpersonal conflict between some of the breeders that they did not cooperate as they I think as they could have, and quite frankly should have, because I think the breed would have resulted, there would have been a better result in terms of the breed quality moving forward. And some of those breeders today I think wish could go back and work with maybe one another, and quite frankly produce better dogs. And that's helped me because I've had long competitors for years in the breed ring, and decided that I really liked what I'm seeing and that we should work together. And quite frankly, we did. Most recently in the last 2 years. And some of the dogs coming up are very, very special, both in conformation and in temperament. And I think that's one of the lessons I learned, which was not just what to do, but what not to do. And I think the key for me is, especially in a rare breed where we have a very small gene pool, and that's a lot of breeds, by the way, in the United States, um, that you need to work together and try to put those differences aside. Yes, we all want to win, but ultimately, it's about the quality of the dogs. And ultimately, we're all going to leave this world at some point, and we want to leave our breed in a better state. So.
Yeah, that's the plan, right? We always want to strive for moving forward, at least. Um, Now you've changed hats a little bit because you've been going forth in the judging world. What made you to decide to do that? Just
Well,
time?
yeah, I think it was time. It was time. People were, you really need to judge. You really need to judge. But I think it has to be in your time, right? When you're ready. Um, and you also have to have the strength of character to walk into a ring and know everybody that's in there. And, you've known them for years. And you've got to be able to put that aside and adjudicate what's in front of you. And and a lot of the good friends I know that are judges, they know that's what you do, but we are human, right? And
Right.
sometimes we that can creep in there, and you've got to have that strength of character. You've got to have that sense of confidence as an individual, as a breeder judge, to walk into the ring and just focus in on the breed. And I think I was at the point where I felt I was very comfortable to do that. I had also been a lure coursing test and trial judge for 15 years prior.
Oh,
So,
okay, go into that for me because I don't really know a
yeah.
lot about that.
Well, that's really it's very interesting that you should touch upon that, because it's one of those sports that to me goes back to that, I think I said it earlier, form and function.
Hmm.
Um, it's a sport that you can actually see the dogs come alive, right? And as a judge, you kind of learn how dogs lure course. Not all the breeds lure course the same, right? A Borzoi
And how do
running is
you
different
learn
than
that? How do you to become a
by
judge for lure
mentors.
coursing?
Yeah, mentors. There's written guidance. Most people outside of lure coursing don't realize, but prior to the American Kennel Club starting the sport of lure coursing, the American Sighthound Field Association first started organizing, lure coursing events in the United States. Subsequently, the AKC started their program. So the American Sighthound Field Association, they put out a handbook about how breeds run, right? Uh, and one of the I'm a parent club mentor for Farrowhounds, and one of the things I always tell people is being a judge in the field. when you're out there, 600 yards into the field, and you're watching a breed like a Pharaohhound run and course the lure, you're actually learning why the breed standard is what it is. And
I'm
I'll give
sure
you, yeah,
that's what I was
yeah.
thinking as
Well,
well. So
I'll give you an example, right? So the Pharaohhound breed, the ear set, for example, we call for the ear to be wide at the base and it tapers. It's like a wide, thicker leather at the base, and then it tapers to a point at the top of the ear. And they should be large and highly mobile. And you think, well, why is that? It's because, well, they're sighthounds. Why do they have a big ear? Well, sighthounds, like most animals, they hunt with both their sight and they listen as well. But what's interesting is if you watch the pharaoh hound running out in the field, if there's a lead dog, for example, that's on the lure, and that lure turns, you will see, if you're watching this in real time, you'll actually see those ears articulate towards the prey. They actually move like this before the dog's head moves. The ears are moving because they're listening and they're watching. And then that tail in the pharaoh hound is supposed to be slightly longer than the hawk. Well, that tail kind of, if the dog is going to the left, the tail will go out to the right, like a rudder, if you will, and it balances. And that's also an alert to those other dogs that are following. So the dogs are not just looking at the lure. There's a lead dog there. So they're working together, right? They're a pack mentality. And so then you can kind of relate the breed standard of how that came to fruition and relate it to the actual work that the dog is doing in the field. And that helped me as a mentor in the breed explain to judges why we want the ears to be the way they are, why we want them to be highly mobile, why we want them to be slightly offset so that they're highly mobile, and why we want that tail to be slightly longer than the hawk, right? Why are these things in the standard? Right? I've had people say, well, does it really matter? Pharaoh hounds don't run on their heads. And I was like, yes, but they do, you know?
yeah,
And then we have the conversation to move it forward. So that's helped me as a mentor and as, quite frankly, a confirmation judge, being able to judge the dogs in the field. And one of my best assignments in judging, and this was about 2 years ago, I was asked to judge the American Kennel Club National Lure Coursing Championship in Oklahoma in December. I don't recommend it from a weather perspective, but I was judging with a judge, a fellow judge from California. Her name is Jennifer Geisler, wonderful woman. She's an attorney in her profession, and I believe she has Rhodesian Ridgebacks. And the way it works is there are two judges assigned to. There's two fields, two judges assigned to each field, so a total of four judges, and you have to judge independently. You do not talk about your scores. You're looking at the course itself, and you're adjudicating it based upon the criteria that we judge the breed on. And
now is there different criteria for each breed? Like, is it
No, it's all the same. It's all the same
okay?
categories. How the judge interprets those categories is, obviously the subjective part of judging when they're actually looking at the criteria, assigning it, whether it's speed, agility, follow. Those are the categories that we're looking at. But at the end of the day, which was very exciting for me, was that the scores came up. And of course, I don't know what the other judge scored. She doesn't know what I scored. And when they came up, there was this sense of accomplishment, if you will, because Jennifer's scores and my scores were either identical or they were within 1 point of one another. That also, I think, gave the exhibitors, those people that were handling their dogs at this event, a sense of confidence that these judges are seeing the same thing. There's a
Right.
consistency of judging, right? There's a validity to what we're doing, and that went on for 2 days, and it was very very rewarding to be part of that environment and part of that event. So
The whole thing sounds fascinating. I can see in my mind's eye how it can be turned into the confirmation ring as well. So, like you just taught me things listening to you. So I think it's great. So
right. Yeah, I
I
just wish
remember,
I had a whole nother life that I could study and really get involved with so many more breeds. But
right,
life is limited, right? I'm so focused on my breed and in my career and my life with my family that it's hard to do everything I'd like to do. But I think if we can talk about it and share things like we're sharing today, I think that helps people understand not just the Pharaoh breed, but the overall concept of purpose-bred, purebred dogs.
sure, exactly. Was there one person or even more than one person that has somewhat mentored you in judging?
I think it was no. The answer is no, in
No.
short. But there was a variety of people that helped, right? So it's not just one person,
Mm,
and they each gave me tidbits along the way, and whether it's in actual knowledge or in process, if you will, how we process information, how we apply it. Um, I think each one of those people, um, uh, I think imbued a sense of responsibility, of knowledge about the breed, and knowledge comes in different forms, right? Sometimes it's auditory. We hear something and then it clicks, right? Or we see something and it clicks. And those are the important, I think, times when we're growing up in a particular breed, and how we learn to apply the breed standard, which is key to try to be independent in our thought, right? And applying that standard. Um, there are certain things that, of course, I had the ability to judge the. This is before there was the ban in Russia with, at the time, American judges, and dogs coming here from Russia. Um, I judged in Russia, and that was a challenge because I had to put away some of my preconceived notions about the breed. The FCI standard was a bit more liberal on white in the breed. We're very clear about our markings here in the United States, and the AKC breed standard. Size was not so much of an issue. So some of those things I had to put aside to judge by that standard. And I was able to find quality dogs, but there were dogs there that obviously had breed attributes that I was not particularly comfortable with as an American judge. But I had to focus in on the breed standard that was being applied there in Russia,
right.
and acknowledge the quality of those dogs, even though some of those breed attributes may have not been what I preferred. So.
Yeah, and it's not easy to adjust your eye to those type of things. I remember being in Ireland, and not so much the standards being different, but even just the style and the
Right.
presentation and everything. You have to adjust your eye to see through them. So,
Absolutely. And the standards aren't that much different, right? It's just how
no.
they're applied and how they're interpreted. And quite frankly, what judges awarded or reward rather, and then ultimately award, their placements. So,
How far are you going to go with your judging?
well, um, I would, uh, I would say that right now I've got about four additional hound breeds in the hopper that I'm, working on. Um, I have been, as some people know, I was very, very busy for the last 8 years with the American Kennel Club. I was on the board of directors, and I was the vice chair from 2020 to 2025 before I turned off. And to do that job right, it's very, very demanding and it's very time consuming. I had very little time to kind of look at advancing my judging career, if you will. So at the time, I decided that I needed to focus on my duties with the AKC. Since I turned off in March, I've been able to get more work done. I'm doing some owner handled groups coming up. I'll see you in Raleigh in a few days, and uh, I'm advancing, a few breeds. So ultimately, I would like to advance my confirmation judging to the hound group. But as we know, that takes time and takes effort. And, I quite frankly have other responsibilities and other duties. So I'll just take it
Right.
as it comes. So,
And not to, I don't want to go in too much into this, but what made you decide to take the politics side of it? What drew you into that?
well, in 2011, so about 14 years ago, I was elected by the Fairhound Club of America Board of Directors to be the delegate for the parent club. And I went to my first delegate meeting. Um, and it's kind of a very difficult time. I felt as someone who was quite frankly the youngest guy in the room, and looking at.
I miss being that person.
Yeah. Well, that was 14 years ago. But uh, I saw what was happening. Here it was 2011, the American Kennel Club. I felt at the time there was very well-meaning, hardworking people, but I felt that we missed a lot of opportunities at the time. And one of the big opportunities that we were missing was, quite frankly, social media. We did not have an active Facebook presence. We did not have an active social media presence, or as active as it could have been.
Mhm.
Um, I felt that at the time, the American Kennel Club was losing the conversation relative to adopt, don't shop. Um, and and I hate to use this because I don't want to diminish any of the hard work that people did, but I felt as though there was a lot of delegates fighting about the silver and the house was on fire. And I had to make a decision at that time. I thought, oh my God, what did I get myself into? Right. And the decision I had to make was, do I just walk away from this, what I felt was kind of insanity? Or do I try to stay and try to help fix what I saw were some problems? Not that I had the solution, don't get me wrong, but I
Mhm.
felt I brought a new perspective or a different perspective. Um, and, you know, I was a person that was breeding dogs. I was, getting involved with judging lure coursing. I was going to shows, you know, and I was able to see what was happening in real time, and I felt that brought some sense of information, real time value to the delegate body. So I decided to stay, which I'm glad I did. And I came back to my second meeting, and I was recruited to be on the at the time it was called the HEC committee. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I'm
And
not.
that is the herding, earth dog, and coursing committee. And they made all the recommendations to the board of directors about aspects of these, the rules and regulations, or I should say, I'm sorry, regulations and policies that affect those particular sports of herding, earth dog, and coursing. That committee now is called HEX with an S, so it's plural, and that now is herding, earth dog, coursing, and scent work. So that committee covers those four aspects of the sport for the American Kennel Club, and they make the recommendations. And so I was on that committee for about 6 years. And I went off that committee when I was elected to the board of directors in 2017 to the American Kennel Club. So, but then I was the liaison to that committee from the board for a period of time. And then when I became vice chairman in 2020, there were other liaisons because I was too busy with the vice chairmanship
Sure.
role.
You're a busy guy, Dominic.
I
You
was, I
really are.
was, I was, yeah, I
So,
was.
um, what's next?
Well, I'm going to, I think I already alluded to the fact I'm going to, advance some of my judging, over the course of the next year. I have the opportunity to run for the board of directors again because the way the AKC bylaws work is that you can serve for a period of 8 years, so two 4-year terms, and then you have a mandatory year off. You can choose to come back. So making that decision now to come back. If I were to come back, I have to be elected in next March to go back to the board of directors. There's a lot of challenges in the sport of purebred dogs, not just for the American Kennel Club, but for a lot of the kennel clubs around the world. And I have a lot of experience after 8 years on the board of directors and 5 years as vice chairman. So I believe I have some value to bring. So we'll see. But I have to get elected first. So
Wow. All right. I've kept you long enough. I have one more question, Dominic, though.
sure.
If you were able to go back in time and meet the 20-year-old Dominic, is there any advice you'd give him now or stay the course?
Oh gosh, that sounds like an interview question for a job. Uh, I can't think of anything, Will. I mean, I do. I think life is filled with opportunities. Um, and, you know, I clearly have made some mistakes in my life, whether it be professional or personal, but all of those decisions I made led me to where I am today.
That is something
You know?
else. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So,
so, people say, "Oh, would you change something in your life?" I'm sure there's particular things I'd love to change, here or there, but there's not one thing I can say because those
yeah.
decisions that I've made that whether they be again personal, professional, in the dog world, outside of the dog world, they led me to this place. I think for the most part, um, the decisions that I've made um, uh, relative to my dogs have been good decisions in terms of the breeding program. Um, And um, not every litter I bred was a home run by any means. Um, but uh, I think take your time. I think early on, as someone that was younger in the sport, I think it's important to show humility. It's important to show respect to your elders. And sometimes we get a little too ahead of ourselves as individuals, and we need to stop and take stock and make sure that we're doing that. Because again,
Right.
without those, especially in the sport of purebred dogs, and maybe you can apply this to almost any part of our lives, but especially in our sport, without those mentors, without those breeders that came before us, whether you like them personally or not, they led us all to where we are today with what's in our home or what's in our kennel, or quite frankly, what's in the show ring. So it's important to pay that respect and to ensure that it's not just a quiet respect, right? Be affirmative publicly and thank them publicly. And maybe that's in itself what I'm doing today. Just thank all of those
Mhm.
individuals. Unfortunately, some of them are gone.
Right. Yeah. Well, that was a great answer, though, Dominic, and good comments to go with it. So thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, man. I don't want to take up any more of your time, so I appreciate that you did
Oh, you're
this with
welcome,
us. I
Mr.
knew you're a
Finch.
busy guy, and I'm going to see you in a couple days. So,
Yeah, it'll be great. All right.
all right. All
Thank you,
right.
man.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Dominic. What a great interview. It was so informative and so engaging. I really enjoyed my time with Dominic. If you like what you see here, make sure you press the like, share, and subscribe button. And don't forget about the podcast. Comes out every Thursday, The Dog Show Drive. Take care, guys.